Monday the 18th. Well, I'm on my way off actually. My last exam finishes. Yeah, I've got about just less than 2 weeks. I draw myself in about 2 weeks or so.
It's not that you can't rearrange stuff,
It's fine. I basically like my
what they've done is they've opened up 2 logins.
Okay.
So I don't know which one to quit.
so not synced
It's a side tip, as daft as it sounds. It's easier, in my opinion, if you put the 2 minutes for speeches rather than doing your phone to keep watching. Yeah, even if it's a cheeky
Got 2 people from anywhere who've requested casual place.
At this point, all casual
So 2 people could get
Good evening, everyone. To start with, before I hit notices to council, because we've got new rules which are exciting, all casual places that have not been taken at this point have been reallocated. There are a couple of people who have asked to be reallocated those casual places. You have them because there are enough. If you want to go up to the desk and quickly grab the login for your phone, if you just head over there. There's Tom Lau and Grace Alga. Just log yourselves in. Get yourselves over there. And make sure to take an orange card as well and a raffle ticket. That can be taken. Oh, that's very Right. It's no worries, I'm just waiting until I've sent back. Lovely. I suppose we have an introduction from me, which I haven't prepared one, but here we are. It's coming up to the end of term. Everyone's going to be knackered. I know I am. I know most of you will be. We've all got essays and exams to come up. I know that we're all probably breaking it at this point. Thank you very much for coming to council in the middle or the start of your exams period. It means a lot that you care this much, that you'd actually come along, or that you've got places and just thought you'd turn up anyway. I suppose other than that, to anyone observing Ramadan Mubarak, and it is also the, please correct me if I get this wrong, International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia. Spot on. I didn't even check my phone for the exact one. And I just thought it's worth acknowledging that. Right, let's get on to stuff. First off, we have a lot of things to just pass. So this will involve you with your little orange cards. So anyone with little orange cards, get them. Yes, please do. Yes, that'd be lovely. Wonderful. Right. Now everyone's got an orange card. Thanks. Now everyone's got an orange card and everyone's busy looking around that lectern. We are looking to pass the minutes of the previous meeting. If anyone has any corrections or anything to raise, put your hands up now. Nope. We're just looking for a 50% of this, so if everyone who wants to pass the minutes of the previous meeting, raise your cards. Anyone against it? Any objections? It's passed. Right, now we have a quick bunch of elections. These are not the PTO ones, these are just regular committee elections. So first off, we've got steering committee. I would like to ask, do I have to do this one? Do you want to do that one?
Very happy to.
Go for it.
Yes, guys, so steering committee is the committee twice before each council session. They scrutinise some of the submitted motions and check them for details, inaccuracies, but also any issues that might arise should that policy or motion be implemented. It's a vital role which ensures that the motions that do get through to council are ready to become union policy. And without the hard work of steering committee this year, we wouldn't have been able to get some really high quality motions which have informed what we do. But also steering committee involves itself in the marketing of student council and also decides on some of the open debates that we have as well. So I thoroughly recommend that people sign up for steering committee. It's an excellent thing to get involved in, which demonstrates your ability to display attention to detail, which I know is something that a lot of employers look for. So again, I'd encourage all of you.
It's a great skill, it's a great meeting, and also you get early access to everything that goes into this document. There are 6 positions available if anyone would like to run for it. Please come up to the front if you're able and sign your name on the dotted line. Yes. I should also note that it is for next academic year. You're not doing any at this point. You do have to have another year here to be doing this. So if this is your final year, just... Lovely. So we have 4 people standing for steering committee. Because there are 6 positions, this can just go to a orange card pass vote. So all those in favour of electing 4 students to steering committee, raise your card. Assuming you can find it, Ronnie. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Right, you're all on steering for next year. Next, we have scrutiny committee, and I would like to ask Emma to explain scrutiny committee for us.
Yeah, scrutiny committee, you get to hold your elected officers, you read lots of minutes and some really important meetings, and listen to the staff update on the mandates, on manifestos, and you make sure that they're doing what they promised that they would when they were elected. So if you like holding people to account, you're making sure that they do what they said they would. It's a really great committee. Current committee has worked so hard this year, so we can continue on that really high level of scrutiny, so please put your name.
Wonderful. There are 7 positions available. I already have 4 because some of you are incredibly keen. If anyone else wants to run for scrutiny committee, please come to the front and pop your name on the dotted line. Don't all rush at once. Lovely. There's one. There's 2.
It only takes one person to go for those follow.
Interested, just... All right, wonderful. I will, I'll do it. Wonderful, so we have 6 people who have nominated themselves. There are 7 positions available, which means we can just go for a quick vote. Everyone who wants to pop these 6 individuals on scrutiny, raise your cards. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Lovely, we have a 6-person scrutiny committee. Right, now we have to elect our student representative on the Senate. Holly, do you want to explain what you've been doing as student rep on Senate?
Yeah, it's quite an exciting go for it. You get to go to meetings with very high individuals in the university, you get to find out lots of exciting things that's going on. We had a really important meeting about the strikes and lots of speaking on provisions because of the strike, so yeah, really excellent opportunity to make decisions in the university.
Wonderful. There is one place for this. If anyone wants to go for it, come up and sign your name off. If there's more than one of you, I'm not going to make you fight to the death. There will be a proper AV vote for it. So anyone? Anyone? No one for Senate? I just want for committees. Student for Senate.
Yeah, I mean, it went over.
Right. Right, lovely. Okay, wonderful. We have... Right. Okay, great. So we have one individual running for the one place for student rep on Senate, which is wonderful. So again, it's just a matter of showing your cards. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Wonderful. Right, now we move on to the senior returning officer. Does anyone else have an explanation? Because I've just ran it past Kay because I had no idea what was going on. If not, I'm happy to run it past yours, unless Ronnie would like to do it.
How do I explain this one? The senior returning officer is the external individual that essentially signs off on our elections. So they play a very important role in ensuring that the students that we elect to sabbatical officer positions and part-time officer positions have gone through a legitimate process in their election. So I suppose it is to approve the senior returning officer, who is the current senior returning officer, if I'm right, Lindsay.
Right, yeah, it is, yes.
Wonderful, thank you. So this is essentially just reinstating Tom Bramwell as our senior returning officer, so it is just another show of cards. All of those in favour, raise your cards. Any against? Any abstentions? Wonderful. Right, now we're going to quickly pass these reports. So we now have our, we have steering committee report to pass first. I'm essentially just going to pass these as we go and as blocks. So for steering committee report, again, cards ready. All those in favour of passing steering committee report? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Passed. Disciplinary and scrutiny. All those in favour of passing this? All those against? Any abstentions? Wonderful. Now we'll move on to the State of the Union report. And I would like to ask Ronnie to pop up to the lectern.
Well, thank you everyone for attending the last Council of the Year. I'm aware that it is a very busy time for everyone, be it with dissertations or exams. But something we've had all year has been an excellent attendance at these student council meetings. And that's not only because we've consistently had interesting motions to debate and discuss, but there's a genuine appreciation for student politics, student debate in this room. And that's what makes all of our jobs as sabbatical officers and part-time officers so enjoyable. It's being able to have a conversation about some of the most important issues that affect students. So thank you for a great year. It's also great to welcome our new sabbatical officers that will be in position by the start of the next academic year. They all ran great election campaigns, and I wish them the best of luck in their adaptation to what can be quite a steep learning curve, but I wish them the best of luck, and I'm sure they'll do an excellent job. Also, good luck to all of our prospective candidates that are running for by-election currently. Thank you for standing. I think it's actually a really excellent thing that by the start of the next academic year, we'll have almost full complement of part-time officers, so they'll be able to get into place and prepare for the summer and prepare for the campaigns that they may want to run should they be elected. The first part of the State of the Union report, I'm going to speak about some of the representation that we've been a part of and some of the progress we've made in the latter part of our sabbatical officer year. And I wish to start with Wellington Street, which was a motion I believe I passed in March, which put the student voice against the current situation on Wellington Street, and said to the council that we felt that it was a dangerous road for students to be crossing to and from to get to the Urban Sciences building and in the future the rest of the Helix. And I'm really proud to say that with the help of Student Council and with the backing of Student Council, we were able to go to the partnership who oversaw the entire £350 million running of the Helix site, and we spoke to them and we said to them that this was unacceptable for students, that students are unsafe. And I'm glad to say that we have convinced them to support the closure of Wellington Street, which is an amazing piece of progress. It doesn't mean that it will be closed tomorrow. The council still have to make a decision on that. But the council have also agreed to double yellow lines, rumble strips and speed actuarial signs, whereas in September, October, they weren't going to do anything. So if anything shows you the power of the student voice and the power of Student Council, it's the ability to communicate with external bodies, the student voice, and we've done that very successfully. I'll move quite quickly through these. We've also done some really, really important work in terms of mitigating the impact of strikes on students' academic courses. Rowan and I worked together to use our 1,200 strong network of course reps to create a strike mitigation form. Course reps filled this form out, and those forms were submitted to heads of schools and heads of modules. Every single decision that gets made about a module in terms of PEC forms and adjustments will take into account those forms, which is a massive achievement. It's a real success of the student voice coming through at what is quite a complicated time. So we've done really well there. One issue that I'm looking to tackle over the next few weeks will be the into attainment gap, where students that are doing a foundation course at Into are more likely to get a 2.2 or below than a 2.1 or above, which when you're paying any kind of fee at this university and are attending this university is quite frankly unacceptable. I'm also pleased to report placement fee success in terms of avoiding the increase that were currently proposed. 76% for domestic students, 400% for international students. Although alongside that, I was concerned to see that in terms of student-to-student support funding, that ratio of the amount of money spent on individual students in terms of support, we are the second lowest in the Russell Group. So these are statistics that we can use to scrutinise the university, and I wish to see improvements in the coming years from the university in terms of that. The next issue that I wanted to explain and to talk about and possibly receive questions if anyone needs any clarity is the very sensitive issue around the reinvestment of foregone salaries during the industrial action period. As we know, there was a 2-week strike and a significant number of our much appreciated lecturers decided to go on strike, and that generated quite a lot of money, which wasn't actually being paid to them. And the Students' Union were consulted on how best to spend that money. And our decision was to split the money between the short-term benefit of those that have been most affected by the strike action and the long-term support and benefit of our students. So we've secured extra funding provision for mental health and counselling services to all students by employing a full-time mental health practitioner, and also widening access to rape crisis and an eating disorder charity who have drop-in sessions which were before oversubscribed. Now we're opening opportunities for people to go and visit them. We've had a huge amount of investment into the NUSU affordability agenda, and for all of those that have been in a library over the last few weeks will have seen that there is a 50% discount on everything behind the counter, which is really tackling the cost of living for students, which I know is such a large issue for so many students. We're pleased to say that there'll be free gown hire for third-year students. £40 is a huge amount of money to come from students, or indeed many parents, and I'm pleased to say that will be £40 back in the pocket of people that want to celebrate their amazing achievement in terms of graduation. We've secured extra funding provision for the Students' Union to mitigate the in-year fall in revenue, and also a funding provision for a capital bid that will enable this students' union to maintain its quality. We have 1.1 million footfall through this building, and there is a sort of funding requirement to make sure that this remains a good place to be. In terms of manifesto updates, I've spoken briefly about affordability, but I'm pleased to say that at the end of the year, we've saved students over £500,000, which is an extraordinary achievement, and we've really tackled the cost of living through bus funding, meal deals, and prevention of extortionate placement fees and rent freezes, amongst other things as well. So I think we've done a huge amount there. I've recently launched my Just What the Doctor Ordered service, which is an online GP registration service, which I hope will be well used in September. And as I've reported before, over 1,000 students will be able to type their exams. So there has been a commitment to the manifesto upon which I was elected. Before I give up the stage, I was going to do a brief presentation on our strategic planning project and where we are with that. So if we could get that on the screen. So NUSU 2021 is our new strategic plan, taking us from 2018 to 2021. And we've decided to refresh some of the parts of this strategy to make sure that we are really meeting the student demand over the next 3 years. So our new mission is to represent, support, develop and enhance the lives of Newcastle University students. And the values that inform that mission have broadly stayed the same. We remain supportive, inclusive, progressive, fun, but we've changed democratic to representative because we wanted our democratic nature to actually have a purpose, and that purpose is to be representative of our student body. And we've also added empowering, giving students the power to make their own changes, the power to express the student voice with a real tangible purpose. So how did we get to this point where we are now? How did we understand where we want to be in terms of meeting the student demand? Well, we did a huge amount of research. We did the biggest research project that we've done in 6 years. Over 6,000 students were involved in that process. And the top priorities that we identified were career support, with 65% of students saying that's important, meeting new people, having fun, and developing new skills. But we were also able to ask what students felt held them back. Obviously a significant number of students saying that self-doubt holds them back, and also mental health as well. So such a significant proportion, over a third of students saying that mental health is holding them back from reaching their full potential, which is shocking, but really gives us direction as to where we want to go. What do students think of us? 68% of students satisfied with the Students' Union, only 5% dissatisfied, but that number 27%, I'm sure we'll all agree, is too high. 27% of students a little bit ambivalent towards the work of the Students' Union. So how do we change that and meet the demands so we're considered amongst that 27% to be offering a real service to our students? To do that, we had to identify 4 strategic priorities, the 4 things that we're really going to be channeling our efforts into. Firstly, it's to empower students to enhance their academic experience, energising students to embrace personal development and career preparation, linking back to that, the importance attached to career preparation, exciting students with new experiences and meaningful social opportunities, and finally, proactively supporting students in their everyday university life. It's very much linking in with the importance attached to the self-doubt and the mental health issues that we've seen. So I'm very briefly going to talk about how we are, tangible examples as to how we're going to meet those strategic priorities. So we're going to empower students to enhance their academic experience. For example, we are looking at the idea of introducing a new postgraduate sabbatical officer to represent the academic interests of postgraduate students, because at the moment perhaps we are too focused on the undergraduate students. I think that's an excellent step forward, and one which many students have replicated. To energise students to embrace personal development and career preparation, we are going to make sure that work experience and placement opportunities are really obvious and clear to students, and also doing that within a kind of digital framework. So that will be an exciting development. Penultimately, exciting students with new experiences and meaningful social opportunities. I think an excellent idea, which I hope we implement over this period, will be making course-based societies an automatic membership, an automatic free membership, which means even before, on the day you've joined university, you're automatically part of an academic network where you're bound by the same academic contexts. And finally, proactively supporting students in their everyday university lives. So to proactively support and signpost students with mental health and other issues in terms of counselling, for example. And this is vitally important, that students know where to go if they have a mental health issue, but also perhaps having more casual ways in which students can work through some of the problems that they may be facing and some of the pressures that they're having whilst at university. But there is a challenge when achieving these strategic priorities. There's a challenge in getting across these opportunities to 26,000 students with different motivations, different ambitions, and different interests. So we have faced a challenge over the last few years as to how we connect with those students. And that's why we were proud to undertake quite an expensive segmentation process, where we were able to identify different students in terms of their motivations, interests, personalities. And we're able to subsequently target students with different messages which would bear more resemblance to what they want from a students' union. So to do that, we asked 6 golden thread questions, which will be implemented within students' registration. And by gauging their answers, we're able to segment them into a into a particular group. And I'll use a case study of employability. So, for example, segment 4 would be probably more interested in more alternative employability messages than segment 5. Whereas before we would be serving exactly the same messages, perhaps a PwC networking event, we're looking at more alternative opportunities and communications with segment 4. And that's not to say that segment 4 won't get any of the opportunities or won't be allowed to participate in any of these opportunities, but it's tailoring a relevant message, which will mean that students will get more involved in our activities because they'll know about the things that are more likely to interest them. Other students' unions have done it as well, including Loughborough, to great success. So I'm hoping that we can replicate that. So the outcome of all of this strategic planning, the outcome of the union in 2021, we want students to have a fulfilling learning experience. We want to do extremely well in the National Student Survey, where students feel that we're representing their academic interests. We want huge engagement with students. And I think overall, from my perspective, it's getting that 27% of students that are ambivalent towards the Students' Union way down and getting that satisfaction up as well at the same time. So, I think I'm going to sit down and then I can answer questions afterwards. But thank you very much. I'll get off the stage now.
Thank you very much. That was a lot to take. Yeah. I'll give it that. No, so we are now moving to a vote to pass that State of the Union report. All of those in favour of passing the State of the Union report, raise your little orange cards. All of those against? Any abstentions? That report has now passed. A few more things to pass before we get to talking and motions. We have general reports and updates on mandates. That is several reports to be passed as a block. So again, it's just going to be an orange card. So all those in favour of passing this block, raise your cards. All of those against? Any abstentions? Wonderful. The PTO end of year reports, mine arrived, it was just late. Just thought I'd slip that in there. So all of those, assuming they've been submitted, are online or are in the document, which I'm hoping you all have read because you should all be reading these. I'm sure you haven't, don't worry. So again, this is just to pass these. All of those in favour of passing the PTO reports. Any against? Any abstentions? And now the SAB end of year reports, which have all been, which are all up there and very fascinating. Would recommend to read. No, seriously, guys, you've done a great job. But I'm not opinions on this chip. All those, again, just a matter of cards. All those in favour of passing the reports. All those against. Any abstentions? Wonderful. Right, now we get to move to some questions. So first off, we have questions to the SABs. I would like to ask the SABs to come and stand up front. Maybe it's behind the microphone? Is behind the microphone. Introduce yourselves in whichever order, and then I'll open it up to the floor.
Let's go first. I'm James, I'm the editor of the Courier.
I'm Ronnie Reid, I'm the president.
Clara, the Athletic Union Officer.
Sarah, Welfare and Equality Officer. Rebecca Bainbridge, Activities Officer.
I'm Rowan South, I'm the Education Officer.
Wonderful. Do we have any questions for the SABs? Any questions at all? We have one. If you'd like to stand up, say your name and just fling your question at us.
Hiya, I'm Scarlett. I don't know if this is actually the right time to ask this question, but I'll say it anyway. Ronnie, when you gave that report just now, you were talking about making the memberships to course-related societies free. So I was president of the Classic Society this year, and I know without the money that we get from memberships, it would be a lot more difficult to run the society, and alongside that, that's where the fee for being at Freshers' Fair comes from. How are you going to resolve that? Because obviously it's a reduction in money for the society.
I hope that it isn't. I hope that it isn't a reduction in money to the society. I think that that process would just be a subsidisation. So instead of actually having to go and make the money in other ways, you will maintain your finances, but you'll actually just have a much wider network of students already in your society when they join university, and a larger network. I think a lot of us would agree that there are perhaps groups and pockets of students that wouldn't go and initially go and join an academic society. So to have them all in one place from the start will be advantageous. But I absolutely agree with you that those societies shouldn't be at a financial disadvantage, and I'm sure they wouldn't.
Hi, Mr. Ronnie. I was just wondering, Ronnie, if I could just get a point of clarification. You say like to increase representation, the idea of a postgraduate SAB role. Now, I don't know if I'm wrong about this, but in the past, I'm sure there's been a PTO position that was a postgraduate position, and yet that was removed as it was seen like postgraduates weren't responding very well to the union. They didn't feel like the union was actually offering what they needed. What exactly do you think will be different about this, and how do you think actually representation, like what does that actually mean, and why do you think a SAB role would change that?
So I can't really comment on the problems that were perhaps with a previous postgraduate part-time officer, but what I do know is that by implementing a fully remunerated sabbatical officer representing the academic interests of the large postgraduate network that we have will allow them to have a more tailored response to many of the issues that postgraduates face. I'm not afraid to admit that my knowledge of the challenges that, for example, PGR students face probably isn't up to the level that it would be if we had a postgraduate representative. And ultimately that's what we as sabbatical officers are here to do, to represent what is such an important part of our student population. So I won't comment on the issues that have gone before, but by paying a SAB to specifically look at those problems and those issues that postgraduate students face, I think that we'll be able to make good progress for them and the issues they face.
Thank you. I'll allow for two more questions before we move on to the PTOs. Does anyone else have a question?
Hi. Sorry, I just wanted to supplement the question that was asked to Ronnie about course rep, just so I understand how it's working. So at the moment, if you join a society, in a course rep society, that's at least £5 the member pays and goes to the society. You're saying the member won't have to pay £5, that'll be subsidised. So for every free membership that a course member gets to a course society, does that course society still get £5, and from where?
Well, I think the reality is that we haven't fully formulated this policy. That's why I haven't brought a motion to student council. But sorry. But yeah, just hang on 1 second. let's not forget that we've got huge numbers of schools that have a lot of finances that could perhaps help subsidise that. And also, that's something we could put in our subvention bid to the university to enhance academic representation. So there will be ways in which we can finance it. However, I wouldn't want to comment on a direct way in which we can do it because we haven't formulated that yet. Simon.
I was only going to add that Ronnie's given you a flavour of some of the ideas to support each of the priorities. When we put the document out in draft, which you can still comment on, there's 4 key priorities and 12 different ideas. That is one of the ideas in terms of building that social network. There's 2 or 3 different ways to do it without actually affecting the current financial situation and it not being massively unaffordable. But we have to work through the detail over the summer before we get set on.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. One more question, and there is one more question.
I'm Jack Green. Can I ask one of your questions? Oh, please. For the strikes, you mentioned that there was money put aside for an extra wellbeing advisor and access to other things in the wellbeing service. Is that like a fixed term thing, or do you know if the university is going to honour those as long-term positions even after the money from the strikes is gone in long term?
Sarah was instrumental in doing this, so I'll let Sarah answer.
So this is like a 12-month trial, but basically what the wellbeing service want to do is they want to basically give the counsellors that role as a practitioner. So it's basically extending it and allowing sort of more support for students and actually helping them develop within that role. With the eating distress and rape crisis, it's not set in stone yet, but it's very likely for the academic year. The counselling service do Monday and Wednesday drop-in sessions. That's looking to enhance to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So that's where the money has sort of gone into to help that. But in regards to that role, that will be a 12-month sort of trial period, and then they're going to examine that and then see, obviously, ideally, in the best sort of case scenario, that's going to continue that role. But long term, they're looking at having the practitioner role for all the counsellors, so giving that extra bit more for the students.
But absolutely hold the university to account, Jack, if it's in your interest, to keep that role on if it's successful, because I think it will help a lot of students out.
It will.
Wonderful,
Thank you.
Should we all like to take a seat, except Rowan, who has to take the chair, because it's questions to the PTOs. Give me a moment, because it takes me a while to stand up. If all PTOs available can stand up and get themselves behind the lectern.
Yes, I was not here. I'm like, what? I thought it was an errand over here. Alright.
Does anyone have any questions?
We haven't introduced ourselves yet.
What?
We haven't introduced ourselves yet.
Introduce yourself.
Holly Waddell, Student Parents Guardians and Carers Officer.
Hannah Patrick, LGBT.
Erica, Chair of Council.
Emma Dawson, Scrutiny Officer.
Does anybody have any questions?
I had to stand up for this, guys. Come on.
Anyone? Come on. Someone must have one. Was that a question, was it? No, sorry. Alright, okay. Let's sit down. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Right. Now we move on to full part. The stuff you've all been waiting for. The motions, which I do hope I have in order. I do not, which I do. Yeah, I do. We're going to be operating as normal. So we'll have a speaker who will be given 2 minutes to speak, be given 2 questions possible, and then there'll be a for, against, and a possible for and against before we come to a vote. And that'll be for all motions because we have the PTO position hustings at the end, and I would like to make time for those. So, our first motion is a business motion on upgrading strategy and guidance documents. This, as a business motion, is passed simply using the cards. I had to check that because it's been a while. So anyone with your orange voting cards, this is just passed through that way unless anyone has any points to make on it. I assume that is right now. So all those in favour of passing motion 101, raise your orange card. All those against? Any abstentions? That's passed. Wonderful. Right. Now we move on to the constitutional motions. These require 2/3 majority votes, so need over 66.6 specifically to pass. So our first motion is updating the election of a vacant PTO position, which has been proposed by Rowan, and if you'd like to come to the front to introduce this motion.
Just before we start, I think Rowan wants to make a small amendment to
Yes.
the motion, so 1 second, we'll just put it in.
Fab. No worries. I also should note, because this is a motion proposed by the proposer, it just goes straight through. Like, we don't, like, that's just done. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves. Yes, yeah, I will, because I know this off by heart. So
which motion am I introducing?
You'll be introducing the council order of business. Rowan, you're coming up to the front.
Okay.
We'll get this one done first. Wonderful. So that amendment has been put forward, and because it was put forward by Rowan, it was obviously accepted. So that is through there now. Feel free to explain it in your speech. Rowan, you have 2 minutes. Go.
Okay, so some of you might remember that a motion similar to this came to the October sitting of council. The idea behind that was twofold. It wanted to ensure that part-time officer roles weren't left unfilled sort of over summer, which is a really vital part of time for part-time officers and sabbatical officers to plan what they're wanting to do. So a change in motion allowing students to be elected at sittings of council, that achieved that. However, what we didn't achieve was trying to make it more simple and more straightforward to do. We wanted to remove the need for a separate by-election in November, and what we've actually ended up doing is adding 5 by-elections in for every sitting of council, which is completely not what we wanted to do, because this takes up a massive amount of time of George Watkins, who is in charge of sort of scheduling these elections. He runs the training sessions, he sets the deadlines and approves all the stuff. So with that motion, it's actually meant George has been really limited in the amount of support he's been able to give to student reps, part-time officers and sabbatical officers this month, purely because of the amount of time it's been taking. So what we want to do is allow students to put themselves forward at council, similar to this, but the way that, for instance, the student rep on Senate is elected. So it's elected by people at council. The one procedural motion I put in, just to amend it slightly, was that any student present at council, regardless of whether they have a voting place or not, is entitled to vote in the election of the vacant PTO roles. It's also going to help marketing, because they don't have to set up an entire election every month. Okay. We found that some students are actually put off by the March elections, especially part-time officer roles, because they see it as a full election, and with deadlines coming up, it can put people off. So this is a way to get a more wider range of students applying for these roles. I'll leave it there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Rowan about this motion? No. Rowan, feel free to take a seat. Owen, to take a seat. And would anyone like to speak in favour of this motion?
No, just to say I think that this is an excellent motion, because it combines the really positive side that we're going to have almost a full set of part-time officers by the start of the next academic year due to the by-election, whilst also making it practical, because it's not taking up too much time in terms of our staff at the Students' Union. So it means that we can be really fully democratic whilst also not losing out on some of the key resources that we have. So I encourage everyone to support this motion.
Well, thank you. Would anyone like to speak against this motion? No. Oh, we have one. Yes, we do. I apologise.
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm new, obviously, but this seems to me to be giving people who are not able to attend council sessions for whatever reason a disadvantage. For example, parents and carers who can't be at these events, who have access to the online vote, which I think is really important for part-time officers' roles, and just in general to the wider society who aren't as politically engaged, but who we are actually mandated to serve when we get elected. So I think it narrows the field too much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favour of this motion? Ronnie, of course. Oh, no. I saw Amelia.
It's actually a question.
Oh, of course.
But I'm a bit confused. It says people can nominate themselves at the final council. So if there are PTA positions left unfilled at the end of the final council, does that roll over to September like it did this year?
Yeah, it just rolls through until February, and February will be the last one because there's no point having one in March because it'll only be in their role for about a week before the semester 2 elections are. So it just keeps rolling in.
Another question on that. Sorry. Won't that take up quite a lot of time in council? And if someone gets elected, for example, in the December council, they'll only be in their role for a short period before the next group of PTOs are elected. How would that work?
I think it's worth it purely to get these roles filled because I think they are important roles and it's good to have representation in these areas. As you can see from this sitting of council, we're going to have nearly a full part-time officer team, barring any wrongs. So it's really, really positive that we've been able to fill the majority of the roles that were unfilled at the semester 2 elections. So it shouldn't take up too much time in the subsequent councils in the following academic year.
Thank you. I will still offer another for, and if that goes through, another against. Does anyone else want to speak for this motion?
All I would say, just to assess your very well put point, we do have positions that we elect solely at council. We've just elected a student representative to Senate. We elect people to very important positions simply in council meetings. So it wouldn't be an unprecedented move. But I think the benefit that this offers us is, as I've said before, the ability to have an almost full complement of part-time officers in a practical way. And unfortunately, if we keep on offering out huge cross-campus ballots, which are pretty poorly turned out if one looks at the evidence, then we don't have the resources in order to run those elections properly, and we also lose out on the democratic presence of a lot of these roles. So whilst I absolutely agree with you that these representatives are mandated to represent the interests of the groups that they represent, this is a really good mechanism through which we can get an almost full, or hopefully next year a totally full complement of part-time officers to represent marginalised groups.
Would anyone else like to speak against this motion before we go to a vote? Yes, okay. Go for it.
I would just say that while it is good for filling the roles, and I appreciate that it's important to have full roles, if they are not filled by people who have been elected specifically by the marginalised groups that they've been chosen to represent, it's not really actually fulfilling the needs of those groups. For example, I don't know how many students of faith are here, but I don't really recognise anyone. So there's that aspect to it, and again the accessibility. So I think that I do understand the need to fill these roles, absolutely, but I think filling it with unknown people or unknown faces to those groups is not most helpful.
Thank you very much. We will now move to a vote. As this is a constitutional motion, this needs to get over 2/3. Now, I'm now using a different set of speakers, so I have no idea how this countdown music's going to be. Let's go. we've had a good couple who aren't logged in, and I refuse to allow democracy to be sidelined by the vote.
Thank you.
No problem. I was going to get up some like 8 out of 10 cats does countdown stuff this time around, but I can't because of my leg. I'm really, really distressed by that. I just thought I'd let you know.
I'm just getting the clothes.
No worries.
Oh, okay.
So as soon as we go on to the next slide, it will
Right. Is everyone's phone... Hang on. Everyone ready? If anyone is not ready, please raise a card. No? Okay, cool. Should we stop it?
Yeah.
Has it come up
When
again?
you refresh it, it
Oh,
goes
we've
back
had a few. Take... Alright, no worries.
Don't refresh your page, let it run. If you just scroll down, it'll load it automatically. If you do reload at the bar, it'll reload.
Normally it works when you refresh it.
If you put it down, it's fine. If you do it on the actual address bar, that's what's wrong with the page.
This is my phone anyway.
Take... Are we good? Take 3. Oh, fudge. Does anyone want to stand up and go to the desk? That motion has not passed. Right, so I would now like to move on to allow Adam to have a shot at our next motion. So I get to just sit and chill for a little bit.
Okay, so the next motion is motion 302. So, next motion 302, Council Order of Business. I'd like to invite Rowan up.
Right, okay, hello again. So this motion is to just sort of sort out the running order of council a bit, streamline some areas, iron some points out. So I know most of you have been given an orange card, and you're probably sick of waving them in the air to vote for the reports. So what we want to do is put all the reports, except for the State of the Union report, into one, and that will be passed automatically unless anyone has any objections or any questions about any of the reports. We've got that one. Also, the PTOs came up to answer some questions when we were actually looking through the council documents. There's actually no constitutional time for PTOs to answer questions, so I think it's a good idea, definitely, to have that in there. Also, we have a questions and mandates section. I think that would be really good for the sabbatical officers to be able to provide updates on what Student Union Council has mandated them to do. For instance, in his State of the Union report, Ronnie updated on the Wellington Street motion, but we'd use that section to update on similar motions. And also, we believe it would be beneficial for students to be able to provide notices to council. So there's a 5-minute section in council for students to stand up and say any announcement they would like Students' Union Council to be aware of. I think that's everything in there. So yeah.
So does anyone want to support this motion anyway?
I have a question.
Okay. So you first, back.
Thank you. Do you mean by, like when you said that it would pass automatically, so that's the bit when we hold those cards up, and it takes like 5 minutes to get through them all?
Yeah.
That would happen automatically to say 5 minutes?
It would happen, it would basically... The reports would come up, and well, actually, Adam would say, the reports will be passed unless anyone has any objections or any questions on any of the reports.
Right.
So it just gets it all through quickly, unless anyone, because it is a bit of a formality that everyone just waves their things in the air, unless someone's actually read it and has a question, which they would say at the time anyway, but that would be their opportunity to say it.
In this update and stuff, there still isn't any actual official time by the looks of it. I didn't see it quite briefly. For the by-election time. So like, I don't know if it's in there or I've just missed it, but I didn't see that there was any time that was. Would that come under positions?
Elections selected by council, I think.
Even if they're not selected.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Even though it's not selected by council.
Yeah. Just be when elections
so
are.
technically that wouldn't be right.
Probably change that to elections.
Yeah, that would be cool. Okay. I don't know if that.
If what if one didn't want to be passed, but the others were fine? Can that stand?
That goes to a vote then.
They all go to a vote then?
Just that.
Okay, anyone else for? Anyone else against? Back there, sorry.
Sorry. I just think at the moment we pass reports and it makes me aware of those reports because we have to individually go through each one of them. And then I went and read them. I did not read them at my first council meeting as a second year that hadn't been exposed to this fantastic enterprise. I think that it made me aware of those reports. It also just seemed, I don't know, I'm just naturally suspicious of the fact that we wouldn't be voting just one by one. And of all of the parts of this meeting that are very, very long, it's one of the quickest and one of the most fun. So I think that would be why. Well, you know, everyone feels involved. So I would say that. But I think in seriously, I think it takes away a degree of awareness and scrutiny from it.
Are you not doing another board again?
So, anyone for? No. Anyone against? Yep.
I do think this is a fantastic motion. I think it's brilliant. But I'd like to, I don't know how you do this, propose an amendment so it is just elections rather than elected by council, just because I think then you get the by-election and everything for the PTO positions included in that time, and it officially makes it that time, but I don't know how.
That can be done. You can submit a procedural motion, you just have to come to the front and scribble it down. I'm happy to. Rowan, if you'd like to come on as well.
Nothing that bad, yeah. I mean, we can get some sort of
I'll see you around.
I'll put it on the screen though in a second, but if you could just explain that Rowan's accepted that, so it's selected by council, all elections positions selected by council and PTO hustings.
Okay, so
just
those are the only words.
Yeah.
That Okay, so the procedural motion amendment has been accepted by Rowan, and so it's to elections for positions selected by council and PTO's hustings. Okay, so this will now go straight to a vote. Are you all ready? Okay. Yep. Okay, so that motion is not passed.
That was a thing. Right, if I am correct, we now move on to what I believe is the final motion of this council, and the final motion I will chair, which is kind of sad a little bit. Right, we are moving on to motion 401. NUSU. On NUSU boycott Barclays, I would like to ask Rebecca to come to the podium, lectern.
Yep. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca and I represent Newcastle University Fossil Free. So I think we're all aware of the Students' Union efforts in promoting sustainability and positive social change through campaigns like Leave Newcastle Happy and the union and university commitment to divest. So we thought that reasonably it would follow that the Students' Union should boycott Barclays until the bank cuts all its ties to the fossil fuel industry. So why Barclays? Well, it's the worst bank in the UK. There's an existing national campaign to ask for the same. And just to give an overview of what Barclays is involved in, through sponsoring fossil fuels, it's involved in climate change, which is one of the biggest threats humanity has ever faced and is causing deaths, especially in the global south right now. And taking one specific project that they are involved in, it's the Carrejon mine in Colombia. They've given $3.5 billion to the company mining there, which is displacing and destroying indigenous and Afro-Colombian communities, and it's also providing really, really bad health conditions for the miners working there, and strikes to oppose these conditions have resulted in murders and dismissals of union leaders. So we believe that if the union is serious about its commitment to sustainability and social change, the right thing to do and the only reasonable step would be to boycott Barclays.
Does anyone have any questions? At the back. Yes, Jake.
Do we have any Barclays facilities on campus? I can't remember.
Yeah, there's ATMs right next to campus coffee, and also the university invests
£1 million in Barclays, and also has £2.4 million in the bank. So banks with Barclays.
Does anyone else have any questions?
What makes you say that it's the worst bank in the UK?
Yeah, I can explain what I mean by that in terms of its
fossil fuel and involvement in fossil fuel industries. So out of all the major banks, considering HSBC, Santander, Lloyds, and RBS, Barclays is the one that has the most investments and funds the most fossil fuel projects all around the world.
So why only Barclays? Not everyone?
So basically, how the campaign is run is targeting only one bank because it's the most, you have to have one target. And so because it's the worst, the students all over the UK have chosen to pick up Barclays. and with the hope as well that it's going to create a domino effect. So like we are going for Barclays now, and then the other banks kind of fear that we're going to go for them. Also, it's good to notice that like HSBC already has some commitments to not fund coal, Arctic drilling and offshore oil exploration anymore. And also the World Bank, for example, has chosen to not fund any oil and gas explorations anymore, while Barclays has just a relative commitment to coal. And, well, basically they don't fund mountaintop removal as an extraction method of extraction of coal, and they have a partial commitment to divest from Third Energy, which is a company that fracks in North Yorkshire.
Unfortunately, we take 2 questions, so I have to move forward.
Just you let them ask 2 questions.
Go on then.
Thank
right,
you.
Go on.
Rebecca, what would your position be should this boycott go through on recruitment events and skills-based events hosted at the university or indeed the Students' Union?
So we are really, well, we don't want to hurt any occasion and opportunities for students to, relative to like careers. So what we don't want to do is like, of course, hurt students and their careers. So yeah, that's why nothing like that is mentioned in the motion.
I'd like to take a seat. Rebecca,
Yeah.
Down. Would anyone like to speak for this motion?
Hi everyone, I'm Andrew. I'm the Ethics and Environment Rep at the Union, and part of that role is to work, like Rebecca said, trying to make the Union more sustainable and work towards sort of ethical and goals. And part of that, I was in a meeting last month with the University Sustainability Committee, the Environment Sustainability Committee, and we talked about the future goals of the university's commitment sustainability-wise. And part of that is choosing ethical funding and our ethical investments as a uni. And I think it's really important that you vote for a motion like this because, like it said, and like I've said, this has already been considered at the university. The doors open, and I think it would be really important for as a uni to give it a good push and show that as students we want to move towards a green future and not have something erroneous in our hands.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to speak against this motion? Yes.
Hi, Sophie again. Sorry. I realise I'm talking a lot on this one. I think that this is a great idea in principle. I think the less fossil fuel investment we can have is brilliant. I'm just very, very concerned about resolve number 2. You say it isn't supposed to be harming students and whatever, but that is extremely broad. And I almost feel like that almost explicitly states that we can't have any kind of commercial event with them, and it almost explicitly states that we can't get sponsored by them if they ever wanted to say sponsor a course or anything like that, like we do with PwC. And I think even if you yourself are kind of, oh, we don't want to harm the student opportunities, there's nothing to prevent someone, if this motion passes, coming up and saying, actually, they can't come to this careers fair, or the university can't advertise these graduate jobs. And I just think that would be extremely worrying to me. I just don't think that that's, I just don't think that's a good idea, that second resolve.
Sorry. Anyone else like to speak in favour of this motion? Yes.
Yeah. Obviously, totally understand your point. Like, that's why we've been really clear that this is not about trying to hurt specific students' opportunities. This is about taking an ethical and moral stance on a company that is causing catastrophic climate change. We've already made the commitment to divest, which had a massive student support, and that's something we should be really proud of as a uni, that we're part of that. And that movement spread throughout the country and throughout the world. This is a logical extension. Let's take that even further. There's only 4 universities that have committed to this campaign so far. Let's be a leading voice on one of the big issues of our time. Put people before profits, and it's not about individual gains. This is about taking an ethical and moral stance as a union.
Would anyone else like to speak against this motion?
Thank you very much, Carol. I'd just like to actually reflect some of the sentiments that have been stated by the proposer. in that we should be a leading voice in terms of sustainability. That should be one of our principles. And I think as a sabbatical office team, that has been some of our principles this year. We've continually held the university to account. Only last week I held the university to account in terms of their progress on divestment, and I'm pleased to say that they've now fully divested from coal, which I think is very strong progress. However, I do take issue with some of one of the responses that I had to my earlier question, which concerned the availability of recruitment events and skill-based events, like that of a skills event that was hosted at the university on the 17th of November by Barclays. And I'm concerned specifically by Resolves 1 and 2. If this motion is to go through and we are to publicly support the People and Planets Divest Barclays campaign, then we will have to keep to the principles of that campaign. You cannot pick and choose. And this campaign on page 23 states that boycotting events surrounding employability is part of the campaign. Now, whether or not that's a compromise we have come to outside of this room in terms of emails and conversations, and I thank the proposer for the conversations that we've had prior to this, but that is a constitutional motion that we as a union have to keep to. So if a student comes in next year and asks us why we are hosting a Barclays-sponsored event or a recruitment fair, we won't have an answer, because we will have prevented Barclays from entering this building on giving them any progress. So I think actually to say that we can pick and choose what we want out of this boycott campaign according to its convenience to students is not the case. It will be constitutionally ingrained that we are not allowed to have a relationship with them. And I can confirm, I believe, that that will affect student opportunity like those events on the 17th of November. We're a representative body. There may only be 30 or 40 of us here, but the voice and the decisions that we make here speak on behalf of the entire student body. And the statistic that I came up with earlier, which is 65% of students wanting a union which puts their employability first, this contradicts that in my view, because we are stopping Barclays, which is a huge graduate recruiter. There were 108 alumni currently working there according to LinkedIn. It stops them from advertising their opportunities. So I urge Council to not let this motion go through, not because you don't agree with the principles of sustainability and being environmentally friendly. We absolutely do, it's one of our core values, but to maintain student choice and to put that first.
Wonderful, and also I do want to note that was the last, other than obviously the Hustings last speech in Council this year. Right, we are going to move to a vote. This one, unlike the previous one, is only 50% to pass. If this gets over 50% in any margin, this goes forward. Are you all ready? Are all of your phones ready? Are any of them going to die on us at any given point in time? No. Go. This motion has not passed. I'm going to miss my thing. Right, and now we're going to move to the final thing. Instead of having an open debate, we have a hustings for the vacant part-time officer positions. Now, how this is going to work is as follows. There are currently, I had to count that, 6 individuals standing for 4 different places. 2 for students with disabilities, 1 for faith and belief, 1 for international students, and 2 for racial equality. What I'm going to do is go down each separate officer role, ask each individual to come up. They have 2 minutes to provide a speech. Then for the roles, students with disabilities and racial equality, the other person will come up and then provide their speech, and then they will be both asked 3 questions as a group between them. So, let's get right to it. Let's move to students with disabilities. Right, you come after my old job, wonderful. I would like to ask Joe Atkin to come to the podium. 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name is Joel Atkin, and I want to be the Newcastle University Student Union's Students with Disability Officer. We've all been there, haven't we? 8 o'clock in the morning, we woke up from last night's bender, feeling like hell, honestly. This is what it's like for a lot of students like me who are disabled and have mental health issues. We can't physically get out of bed in the morning, not because we're being out drinking all night, but because our body and our mind's not letting us. They find it difficult to catch up with work when you miss your lectures as well. You know, if you're missing your lecture, you find it difficult to catch up. This is why I want to bring in recap across the board. Under the 2010 Equality Act, the university has to put into place reasonable adjustments for students who identify as being disabled, something I feel students are being let down with, which is one of my main policies on there is to get all the policies recapped. This is something I'm going to fight for if I'm elected. I've been told constantly that you can't do it. Can't be done. It's been tried in the past. But that's not good enough. If you vote for me, I'm going to fight for this, because this is what is basic right for students like me who are disabled. Something else I'm really disgusted at being told as well is students who came forward to student wellbeing as being a victim of sexual violence and being let down. I find this ridiculously upsetting, as I hope most of you sat there do. It's something I really want to work with students and student wellbeing. It was nice to hear from Ronnie as well that they were saying they're going to bring in the rape crisis for 2 days a week. I think that's fantastic news. But I don't think the university can go far enough. We need to provide more support to the students who are doing it. I have a friend of mine who came forward as being sexually assaulted on the university and waited 3 weeks to get a counsellor. It's disgraceful, in my opinion. I want to enhance Disability Awareness Week as well, something I think is outstanding. Zoe Gordon has done an awful lot of work for this, and I think she's done great work. But I still think we can go further by doing this, which is why I want to bring in external speakers and host events to raise better awareness across the board. A vote for me. Okay, that was it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take your seats. I would now like to ask Haris Qureshi to get away from my computer and come up to the podium. Whenever you're ready, you've got 2 minutes.
Hey everyone, so as I'm sure a lot of you know, you've seen me around, I'm a very active member of a student union, I'm very much a passionate activist, and a lot of that has come from basically my entire childhood, suffering from low-key ableism, people telling me, no, I can't do this because I'm disabled, and things like that, and that has inspired me to very much, not fight just for my own sort of ableism that I face, but just oppression as a whole, I fight against it, but very much all that came originally from my experiences of being told I can't do this or I have to back away from this activity because I can't do it, and that never sat right with me. So I've already run a couple of I've already helped and been part of certain movements within the union. I'm a very active member of Minor Gap, which before DanceSoc was created was probably the closest thing we had to a disability society. Of course, now DanceSoc's created, that's a fantastic society to represent disabled students. A big key part of my manifesto is that whilst I have a disability list as long as my arm, I am very aware that I do not, I cannot possibly understand what everyone who's disabled goes through, because disability is very wide and varied, and I want to spend a lot of my tenure, should I get elected, speaking to as many people as I can across the board and find out what they want, because I, for one, can't understand someone who has a disability I don't have, what they need, so I need to speak to them and find out what they need. Speaking from Zoe, who in my predecessor, what they have told me is that a lot of problems they face has come across communicating to students, because it's not quite obvious who they are for obvious reasons. So I want to use a lot of my experience with communications and get messages out, invite students to come speak to me, hold frequent sessions, make my presence known so they know that there is a person in the union who can basically fight their causes. I've gone through a lot of the systems. I've gone through wellbeing. I've gone through DSA or PIP as it is now. I've gone through DLA, stuff like that. So I can obviously very much help advise on my experience as a student having to try and get support. So for those reasons, I urge you to vote for me. Thank you.
I would like to ask both candidates to come up to the front here. Wait. I am patient. We do have time. If you need a seat, grab a seat. I should have said that earlier, but here we are. This is a role that's very, very important to me, and I'm staying incredibly impartial, but just for a moment, it's what I do. Right, I'm offering 3 questions. Who's got them?
It's one for Joel actually. Can we go back
It needs
on
to
his-
be, it will be for both, either way.
Okay.
So it will be posed to both individuals.
Okay, well, I don't have a question then. It was a question on Law Manifesto.
Yeah, go on.
On your third point, improve sexual violence matters
Yes.
and student wellbeing, I just actually wanted to ask if you knew about current work the university doing on changing the culture and whether you were basically indicating you're going to be representing and ensuring that all needs of students with disabilities matter, or is it a generic thing? Because I understand your point, but I was wondering whether basically just caught up and aware of the current big project that's been happening this year.
Personally, I didn't know there was a thing going on. I knew obviously the rape crisis was announced here, but I didn't physically know a great deal about it. And I know, being a disabled person myself and having a lot of friends who have been affected by well-being, we're not getting the support that we need.
So
and
it's more of a generic.
It's more. I'm not going to bring in certain, like bringing rape crisis 7 days a week type thing. I want to go to student well-being and sort of say, what are you doing? Why aren't you getting the turnaround on it? Why are people waiting 6-7 weeks to get a counselling session when they are physically on the phone to Nightline saying, this has happened to me, I can't go on anymore, why are they waiting 6 weeks? And it's, I can't, obviously at the minute I know very little about what wellbeing do, because I'm not the officer, but like, as soon as I'm elected in, that is the one thing I will fight for.
Lovely. Would Harris, I was going to say, because for interest of fairness, would Harris like to provide a response?
Yeah, I have read some of the things you've published. I can't for the life of me quote at the moment, but I'm aware of this work you're going through and the sort of the new motions in progress, and I think they're all amazing ideas. And I absolutely, where it crosses over my remit, will fight for this cause. It's something I am firmly passionate for as well, because I've sadly known too many people who have gone through situations, and people who have suffered sexual harassment and sexual violence often do suffer from mental illnesses afterwards. So where it comes from my remit, I'll absolutely cover it. I'll also work very closely with your successor and marginalised genders officer, because it comes across with their remit as well. And it's obviously a thing which we can all pool our resources together and fight against.
Wonderful. Right. Couple more questions. Who's got them? I see. I'll go with Polly, then Scarlett. Polly, then Scarlett.
So, on the issue of recap, I noticed that you don't have it in your manifesto, Harris, and you do, Joe. So I'm wondering, there's been a lot of work on recap done in the past. Previous education officers had it in their manifestos. Is it a conscious decision you left it off, and what kind of makes you think that you're going to be the one to bring recap in when it's required?
Start with Harris this time around.
Yes. In the 4 years I've been here, I think the recap issue has come across literally every single council. There's definitely a demand for it. Having spoken about subjects both casually and within my running for this role, it's very obvious that it is a very big issue, but also a very difficult one to manage. But I'm not going to pledge to be the person to solve it. I don't think that's something I can promise when previous people have failed to do so. What I will say is, as long as there's a demand and a need for it, and obviously is, I will do what I can to fight for it, and I'll hopefully try and whittle down and get it and move progress towards it being the case. But obviously it's been an issue big enough to have been a case for at least the last 4 years I've been here, probably longer. And I won't say I'm going to be the person who solves it, but hopefully I will put effort towards it, so my successor or my successor will be the person to do it. So that's why I didn't pledge to obviously make any firm ground, but obviously I will fight for it.
Wonderful, thank you. John, go for it.
I came prepared because I knew the issue with recap would be brought up. My thing for recap was I've had a lot of consultation with disabled students, and if I'm elected, the role of the PTO is to represent their voice in the students' union and to the sort of everybody else, the students in the university. And the main issue was the hindrance of their education by not having recap, and it's the one thing I'm going to fight for. Is it's a legal requirement of this university to make reasonable adjustments. If you are disabled or mental health, like myself and Harris, the university has to put in these places, and what students wanting is recap, because they physically can't attend lectures sometimes. And it's the one thing, I know it's been tried before, I know Errol has, I believe you tried it previously, and it's something I'm really, really going to fight for. And I mean, I'm going to, if I'm elected if tomorrow at 5 o'clock I'm elected, once I get my exams out of the way with, I will be writing an open letter to Chris Day, just saying why are we not having recap across the board, outlining the strategy for it. And I'm also willing to actually go quite far with this. I've had conversations with MPs previously about disability, and I will be willing to happily go on to the Education Secretary, which is one of the main reasons why I feel I could get this actually done, is through the physical fight that I'm willing to take because of this. It is a basic requirement that the university are failing students on.
Quick point of information on that 2 years ago a report was released by NUSU on recap, conducted by our previous education officer in working alongside our previous youth officer, myself and Daniel, and I think it was our previous activity officer as well. I can be wrong. I could be completely wrong in this. A report does exist. Read it. This might provide context for recap for you when it comes to voting. One more question. I think I've guaranteed that to Scarlett over there.
Oh yeah, sorry, it's another one about recap. So I find it, everybody talks about it all the time, so sorry, I'm asking a question about it. But the issue with recap is that the lecture that a lecturer gives, you cannot force them to use recap because they have ownership over their voice and over their presentation. So I'm a student rep and I'm an advocate for people having recap, and I think it's incredibly important. But there are some lecturers who don't want their own research being uploaded online, and because it can affect their future as an academic. How would you tackle that? Because they have heard these reasonings before, and that hasn't so far changed their minds. So I don't know how you would.
I think that's a very good point, actually. Yeah, of course, every lecture that goes on, it's their own work and it's their own thing. Some lecturers, like one of my own this morning, was quite happy. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't care about if his work's used. But others are, though, and I think we need to find a balance between, okay then, so you're not happy to use recap. Are you happy to provide another way, another format to give to these students that is not present, so you can't just go online and find this lecturer's work and then sort of use that against them type thing. There needs to be something in place, and if we can't use recap, that benefits students in other ways. So maybe providing a written script of it, a physical written script of what that was said in that lecture. And so, personally, it's something I will look at. Is once if I am elected, I will be discussing with Chris Day, the Vice Chancellor, as well as all the different sort of heads of schools about what we can do. If for any reason they say no, you're not having recap. End of the day, you're not having it, or you're going to get kicked out type thing. I'm going to go, okay then, fine, I tried. What else can we do then? And so that's the one thing. If we can't have recap, so certain lecturers won't do it, I'll just find another way of bringing about support to students who don't attend lectures. Or can't attend lectures, or should I say.
I mean, the points you raised are very potent points, and sort of the reason why it's been such an uphill struggle to get recap universal. I mean, obviously I agree it's a phenomenal tool for accessibility, and I use it quite a lot. I'm lucky in that my school is recap across all the lectures. I do computer science, and I'm quite lucky in that case. One of the things given to me personally was the ability to privately record lectures onto a sound recorder. Not that I needed it, but that was something that was awarded to me should I have to need it. And so that's, I think the key here would basically to raise awareness of the options available to students. So I think Jill mentioned a couple of good ones, like written things, or tell them if they go to wellbeing, if you get the thingy form. SRP. Yes, that one. There's S and R's in it, basically, is what I'm getting at. And basically, if they get that submitted, they can get a lot of support. Even I wasn't aware of until I had to go through the system myself. So it's making that system transparent and aware of students and what they can get out of it.
Lovely. I was gonna limit that question, but you've had your hand up for about 4 minutes, so I'm gonna have to let you.
It's not a question, it's just a point. I'd like to answer that. I'm also a student rep, and I've heard somewhere, I can't remember where I've heard it, but because lecturers are employed by the university, what they say in the lectures is not their own intellectual property anymore. It belongs to the university. So I just wanted to add that.
Is there a point of information on that?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Basically, the university owns the intellectual property, but the lecturer owns the performance rights to the recap recordings. So it's their right to choose whether the recap recording is made available.
Bloody love recap drama.
It's a pain in my life. However, the university changed the policy this year to for recap being opt-out where appropriate, which means a lecturer can't opt out if they just don't want to use recap.
Amazing. Wonderful. Right. Feel free to take a seat. Thank you very much to both of you. Right. Awesome. Right. So now we have our students with faith or belief officer. I would like to invite Grace to the podium. You've got your 2 minutes. As I flourish my watch. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Grace. I'm running for Students with Faith and Belief, part-time officer. I'm very, very passionate about this role. I think a lot of people who know me will know that it's basically all I talk about. I'm really dedicated to serving people who are otherwise overlooked in their faith communities. That's a big thing for me. I was instrumental this year in creating the role of Faith and Belief rep within the LGBT society, because unfortunately a lot of the typical faith societies that we do have at Newcastle University miss students with faith or belief who become questioning when they come to university or are looking into different options or exploring, and those are the people that I really want to be able to support in my role particularly. Those who do not have the access to the traditional faith networks that the university already provides. Those are great and great support systems. They don't catch everyone. So that's a main point. Another main point in my manifesto is transparency. It's been very difficult to get information as someone who is not hyper involved in traditional faith societies at the university to get information about what provisions the university provides. They're very hard to find on the website. They are complicatedly worded and not very clear. And there has been some issues this year so far with university promises and transparency in terms of what the university can provide. So that's something I would really push for. I also want to seek to diversify activities available to students of faith, drop-in sessions, etc., and to diversify the chaplaincy service, as it's quite Christianity-centric at the moment, which is good, but not available to everyone.
Thank you very much. I was going to say, does anyone have any questions first? You'll get your round of applause, don't worry.
No, it's okay.
Ron. Go on. Yes.
What do you aim to do about the problem with the prayer space in the business school? Because at the moment, students have to walk all the way to the main campus and then they struggle to get back in time for lectures and things like that.
Yeah, so I've specifically mentioned the problems with the prayer spaces that are available on campus, both in the main building. I don't think I've specifically mentioned the business school, but to me it's unacceptable that there isn't a space available up there, and in the medical school for that matter. It's something that honestly should be available to every student regardless of which part of campus they're on, because for example with Muslim students, the 5 prayers a day, it doesn't really matter where you are, you're going to do that prayer, and so you can't really afford to plan ahead 10 minutes to be able to walk to the one prayer room available on campus. So yeah, that's something I would definitely push for within all sections of the campus, just have more spaces available.
Yes, yourself at the back and then Ronnie afterwards.
A good friend of mine is treasurer of the Christian Union, and as I'm sure you might know, there are a few problems with the storage spaces which are located near Winter Terrace. The union intends to repurpose the space for something else, I can't quite remember, but for office blocks or something like that. Okay. And the Christian Union still hasn't found anywhere to put the equipment which is so necessary for things like open evenings and things like that. I was just wondering how else you would go about tackling this problem.
Okay, so if the space has been deemed not fit for that purpose, that's not something I can necessarily say that I disagree with. Obviously, I don't know building regulations, but absolutely that equipment is key to a lot of the work that the Christian Union Society does. So I definitely push for a space either available near Windsor Terrace. I believe there's an accommodation that's quite close nearby, so maybe they could help out, or to have a space that's centralised on campus. There's certainly spaces, I think, there should be more provision for students of faith and faith societies to have a space within and organised by the Students' Union that they don't have to organise themselves, if that makes sense. So I would push for a collective storage space, I think would be my way of tackling that, would be to have a space made available in the Students' Union, perhaps, or in NUSU Central for the storage of any faith-based societies' materials that they use for their activities.
Yes. There is currently space provided by the Students' Union for all societies. It's not exclusive to faith-based societies. We are looking, because, for example, charity and fundraising societies are just massive at the union at the moment. We're wanting to create more space within the lounge for all of their provisions in there, so maybe shifting some of the stuff up from the current societies cupboard, which is on level -3 at the moment. Yeah, so a few years ago that was literally just a cupboard, like tiny, and it has expanded, changed a few things around, so that space is currently there for students.
Yes, no, Grace, just because you seem to be very well versed on a lot of the issues that we've been facing this year, and one of the issues that came up was specifically about the Islamic Society's use of the King George VI building, the prayer space. I don't know if you've visited the prayer space, but I was wondering what your stance is on maintaining that as an Islamic space, which is for the information of everyone else, the NUSU stance that should be an Islamic prayer space. What's your view on that?
So, can I just clarify? Exclusively available to Muslim students?
As in, anyone can go in there during the daytime if they're accompanied by a smart card holder, but the purpose of prayer there is for Muslims, because our argument is that you can't really have, for example, Islamic prayer, which involves a call to prayer, for example, and maybe a more quiet-based prayer, because the two wouldn't work. What's your kind of perception on how that prayer space should be used?
Ideologically, I would object to the idea that our prayer lives are not compatible. But I do understand, and that's something I would consult the Islamic Society on. If they want to maintain that space, I think that is fair, especially considering the differing regulations on different genders praying together. That is apparent difference between the different faith groups we have on campus. My main point is accessibility for all, and there are things that come with that where you have minority group only spaces, and I do think that that's incredibly valid as well. So I wouldn't allow my push for accessibility to prayer space for all groups of people to infringe on that space that has been made specifically available for Islamic students. That's all right. It's fair.
Thank you very much. Feel free to sit down. Everyone, applause. Yes, it is. Yeah, we've got until 15:15, so I'm not going to rush this, but I am going to make sure the questions are limited. So please, if you have a question, ask one. If we are now doing International Students Officer, is Pablo Charo de la Fuente here? If you'd like to come to the podium.
Hello, everybody. So basically, I'm running for International Students Officer. I think that because of my experience as school rep, business school rep, I can be in this position. In the business school, I think I have helped promote multicultural events, increase the conversations around international students. And basically, what I aim to do in this position is to ensure that all international students feel that they are treated equally and fairly. Right now, I think we have a problem with international students and Brexit. They can feel that there are some points currently in the UK going against international people, including international students. So I think we have to tackle that. Here at university, I would be going against any any action that tries to reduce the rights of the European international students. And when it comes to the international students, especially I'm going to go against the cap of the Tier 4 visa students that they are trying to do right now.
Lovely, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Yourself, yes.
I totally agree with you about the T4 visa and the work as a cap. I don't think it's entirely fair, but it's something set out by the Home Office, not the university. What can you really do to oppose that, apart from expressing sympathy?
Well, I think that in a position here in the union from the council, we can firmly and strongly express that to the university. And I think that if we really manifest that we can make that proposition don't go on.
Lovely, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Mine's just still on the Tier 4 visa issue. So the university also can't decide that a student on a Tier 4 visa can work more than the 20-hour limit. The student would lose their visa, and the university would lose their license for international students to come, which means all international students at Newcastle University would have to go home. They wouldn't be allowed to study here.
Yeah, but I think that currently that's not what is being talked about. They are not speaking about increasing the hours of more than 20. I think what they are speaking is that international students can only work at campus and that they can work less than 20 hours. I don't know if it's 10 or 12 that they can work. So it's different what the law is saying and what the university is saying.
So it's the sort of areas that students can work in. At the moment, they're currently limited to one area. This is because of renewed efforts by the Home Office to crack down on accidental breaches of visa contracts. So what the university is doing is trying to work on a solution to allow students to be able to work across multiple streams. At the moment, they're not able to do that. I think it's just the way it's worded in that manifesto. It would not be something that you would be able to influence. So I just want you to be aware that it would be more working with the university on how to improve that rather than opposing it.
We have time for one last question.
Pablo, one of the statistics that I brought up in my presentation in my State of the Union report was that foundation students that go through into are more likely to get a 2-2 or below than a 2-1 or a first. How do you feel about that, and how can we improve into students and their integration at university?
Well, basically, that's a very interesting point, because I've heard about this before, that international students normally tend to do worse in their modules, in their courses. So basically, I think in my role, I need to analyze if we are treating fairly in the examinations these students. So for instance, one really interesting point that I see in one Rowan proposition, I think it was about doing exams on computers, and I think it's very, on Ron, yeah, sorry. I think that's very interesting because, for example, I think that I've spoken with this with a lot of fellows international students, that they struggle is that at least when we do assignments, we can use a corrector, we can use a dictionary, but for example, when we are doing an exams, we can have a dictionary, a physical dictionary, but as you might think, it's really difficult to be using dictionary. So basically allowing international students to, for example, use computers and use correctors so they don't have any problems writing their exams, I think it would be a good idea.
Thank you very much. I'd like to take a seat, everyone. We now have our racial equality officers. I would like to invite Christopher Wilkinson to come to the front. this walk always seems just to take forever. Right, you've got 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you everyone for coming. I will try and make this quick because, as Errol pointed out, I'm very conscious of time here. I just want to say first that I absolutely love this university. I love it for many reasons, but for one reason in particular is that last year we celebrated that 50 years ago one of the most influential men in the last century came to this university to be awarded something which was denied him in his own country, which was the respect given to ethnic minorities and to the struggle that they go through every single day. And when he came here, he left some sort of mark on this university, and I think this mark is still with us today. And I think we should respect that, and I think we should celebrate that and show that we are the most progressive, one of the most progressive universities in this country. But I know for a fact, from personal experience and from experience such as my time editing for the Courier, that there are some resistant opinions in this university about this kind of thing. There are some people who still try to resist progression when it comes to equality in the university and things like that. And I think we really need to combat that. I went to a school which was very, very, very much non-white. It was a very inner-city school in Derby, and some of the people I met there were brilliant, and they were absolutely fantastic people, but they couldn't get to this kind of level because they suffered from some of the things which people have to go through every day, and they still feel at this university. Things like not having the same financial resources and things like that. And as I said, I'm very conscious of time, but I'll try and do things which make the transition from a lot of ethnic minorities transition to this university as smooth as possible and try and make it a bit more fair for everyone. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Feel free to take a seat. I would like to invite Tom to the podium.
I'm not sure if he's here.
No, okay, well, stay there. We now have questions. We now have time for 3 questions before we go. Fire away. Who's got questions? Ronnie has questions. Ronnie always has questions.
So this year, unfortunately, I'm sure we'll all agree, we didn't have a Black History Month because we didn't have a racial equality officer in place. Is that something you'd be planning to organise, I think, in October or November?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, definitely. As I said, this university has something that we really need to be proud of, and I think it's something we really need to celebrate. And I think that Black History Month is a good time to celebrate that kind of thing. As I said, if I was appointed officer, I'd get to work doing that straight away.
Anyone else? Any questions? That is a question for Amelia.
Hi Chris. I don't want this to sound like a really leading question, but quite a lot of your manifesto and your speech was focused on stuff related to Martin Luther King. Do you think that it's possibly a bit tokenistic because the university claims to care about the rights of BAME students and that sort of thing, but then spends, I think it was $300 grand on a statue of Martin Luther King rather than things like bursaries for BAME students? And I was just wondering how you'll be thinking about that in your role and making sure that you're not using the legacy of Martin Luther King tokenistically.
Well, I think this is quite interesting. A lot of people have said this around universities, saying that the university milked the whole Martin Luther King thing, and that basically it was a big thing, but not as big as the university has made it out. Well, when Martin Luther King came here in 1967, it was still legal to discriminate in this country, and for black people to not be employed in jobs or to live in certain apartments. And I think and it's still legal, in fact, to be racist to people like my dad. And I think the fact that this university showed itself not only to be an influencer among other universities, but an influencer among the country, I think is very, very important. And I think the whole thing about the Martin Luther King statue is, again, it has a symbolic place in the university, but an even more important symbolic place among the country as well. So, yeah.
Do we have one more question? One we do, James.
Still on the same theme, Chris. What's your opinion on Luther's being named after Martin Luther King?
I actually didn't know it was named after Martin. Is that true? Oh, right. I didn't know that. I genuinely didn't know that. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's maybe that is milking it a little bit too. I'm not sure.
Wonderful, right? Feel free to take a seat and a round of applause. One last thing. Square lectures are right here. Get your raffle tickets. In fact, you know what? Pick one up. Hi guys. This one.
393. Last one.
Oh yeah. And anything for wild.
362.
362. Do we have a 362? We do. Wonderful. Right. I'm going to bring this one last time to get your attention. I'm going to miss that. Right, last few things. One, is voting now open? 7:30. Voting is going to be now open. Go to www.nusu.co.uk/vote. I've not practiced that. To vote for your upcoming your part-time officers for next year. I'm just going to go on a bit of a ramble here. It's been a long year. I've been here for 5 years now. This is my last year here. And this is like a third-ish year I've been properly involved in this students' union. It's been absolutely amazing. The work I've seen my SABs and PTOs do, the work I've seen you guys do, the fact you guys just turn up is absolutely amazing. And I want to thank each and every one of you for that, for putting the effort in that you have. And for those of you who are going to be here next year, keep turning up. For those of you who aren't, I wish you all the best of luck in whatever you're doing. I also, before we go, George, Kay, Angela, I was my brain went nah, and I was like, no, I'm going to use full names here. Have kept council running this entire time, including with the blips. Considering we've had a lot of blips with Umbia, I would like to give them a round of applause for the work without them. And I mean, I'm not coming back and running it if you guys are going. I'm not going to, it'll be it. But yes, next year's SABs, next year's PTOs.
Can I make one more of them?
Of course.
Sorry, can I also say thank you to NUTV, George, Angela for pouring through all the council motions and that. NUTV again. But also, can I also say a massive thank you to Errol for being in the chair this year. He's done a really good job. He's conducted council in a cheerful but also timely way. He's made sure that people get a fair shout, even when I pull faces at him. And he's done a really, really good job. So can we give him a round of applause?
Point of order. I've got 30 of these instead of 20. Let's go down with this. Let's go.